Hello, Paso. I hope you had a great week and everybody got a chance to schedule their EdCat hearing before the deadline. If you would, please pay attention to the notice dates. EdCat was running a little behind, so if you notice, if it states that it was printed out after April 8th, then you have an extra week until the 23rd to go ahead and schedule that hearing. So this week I wanted to get into the factors causing rising home prices and inflation's impact on the market. I feel like there's a lot of misinterpretation and a lack of understanding on the subject. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off with non-synthetic variables first. So let's begin by talking about the very basic concept of supply and demand. So if there are two similar homes and one buyer, the seller is going to have to compete for that buyer by dropping the sales price. Obviously, the buyer is going to pick the cheaper home when the only differentiating factor is the price alone. So on the flip side of that, let's go ahead and say that we have one seller but two buyers, which is where we're at now. It's called the seller's market. In this instance, the seller is going to pick one of the two buyers that's willing to pay more, given that both buyers are identical. What a buyer is willing to pay consistently is the value of a home, and that's going to dictate the market. So when this happens over and over again, a trend develops that residually impacts nearby home values. It's not good for the average consumer because right now home values are outpacing the average person's income, widening that gap. So the main condition pushing this was the record low interest rates during the pandemic. Another was people wanting to feel secure after the lockdown and the COVID nonsense that occurred. Okay, so the buyer frenzy that ensued was a global phenomenon, and the labor poaching became a real issue. National brands and more expensive metropolitan builders were traveling out of town, picking up laborers to come work for them at a greater pay. As you can imagine, this created a labor vacuum in some areas, so these smaller builders were forced to compete with these larger builders, causing builders on both sides of the coin to have to raise their prices. Okay, now what about lumber? Let's go ahead and talk about that. I'm sure if you've been in a Home Depot recently, you've noticed that it's nearly doubled in price since pre-pandemic times. Early on during COVID lockdowns, sawmills were shut down. Many minimized production in anticipation of reduced demand. Since then, they have not been able to catch up. Okay, tariffs on Canadian lumber nearly doubled, and domestic production was impacted because of a strong wildfire season in the western parts of the U.S. There was less wood available and more people willing to buy, leaving builders and consumers at the mercy of those who held the commodity. And gas prices. Gas prices have increased the cost of everything across the board. Buying a tomato that was grown locally is going to be cheaper than one grown across the United States or in Mexico because you have to pay to get it here. And when I say you, I mean you, because that cost is absorbed into the price of the products that we're pulling every day off of the shelves. I consider gas a semi-synthetic condition because of the impediment by way of regulation and a failure to issue new leases on drilling that's causing the rising cost. America burning oil to ship oil via tanker and then using it anyways is neither green nor cost efficient. Domestic production is so much cheaper. Now onto the synthetic condition impacting inflation the most, and that was stimulus payments. Fiat currency pulled out of thin air. Inflation essentially is a reduction in the purchasing power of money, and that's exactly what happened when our monetary pool was diluted. What once cost $1 now costs $1.20, so you get the exact same product, but it takes more money to buy that because the money is worth less, comparably speaking. I'm going to use round numbers to make it easy to explain. So let's say that we have $10 on one side and the value of the market on the other. So this 10 equals the market. So now we print another $10 equaling 20, but on the other side of the equation, we still have the same market value. Because there is more money in circulation, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have more buying power. It means that the buying power of each dollar has been fractioned. It's worth less. Okay? Of course, this never occurs as cleanly as I'm outlining it. It occurs in varying degrees, but I'm hoping after hearing these things, you're beginning to understand how variable, dynamic, and really organic the economy is. If there's one thing it's not, it's simple, like these online articles and headlines lead you to believe. If you paid attention to when Elon Musk bought out 11% stake in Twitter, you can see a distinct relationship between this concept and the poison pill tactic that Twitter used to try and avert a hostile takeover. They tried to increase shares, diluting shareholder equity by reducing the holding ratio per share. They wanted to inflate the amount of shares to reduce Musk's position in the company. But don't be discouraged, buyers. There is light at the end of the tunnel. February, March, and April all saw increases in inventory, something that hasn't happened for a single month since the pandemic hit. If this trend persists, and what we're looking at is inventory catching up to demand and more favorable conditions for the average consumer, meaning that home prices will level out or drop and interest rates will start to become competitive again. Well, guys, I hope you enjoy these. They shed some light into market condition and help provide a little bit of understanding. As always, I'm available to help rain or shine, so reach out if there's anything that I can do for you. Stay safe, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.